Hi everyone, welcome back. In this lecture we are going to take a look into functional components. Well, in React there are two types of components, functional components and React components. In this lecture we will take a look into functional components, and in next lecture we will take a look into class components. A functional component is basically a JavaScript function or ES6 arrow function that returns a React element. Well, here React element is nothing but a JSX code. Well, we will understand what is JSX and how to write a JSX code in upcoming lectures. So just try to understand, React element is nothing but a JSX code, and JSX allows us to write HTML code inside a JavaScript code. Next, functional components always starts with a capital letter. So this is the important naming convention. Whenever you create a functional component, make sure that the functional component should start with capital letter. Next, functional component takes props as a parameter if necessary. Well, this props is optional. If you want to pass the data from one component to another component, then we can use this props. Alright. Next, let us go ahead and let us understand about this functional component with examples. So here let's head over to the VS Code, and here go to SRC folder. Within that, let's create a new folder and let's call it as components. Next, within a components folder, let's create a new file and let's give name as welcome.js. Well, you can give the extension for this file as a JS or JSX. Well, some of the developers prefer using JS as extension, and some of the developers prefer using JSX as a file extension. Well, you can use either one because React supports both, right? So here in our case, let us use JS as an extension. But in upcoming React projects, we are going to use JSX as an extension as well. Alright, hit enter. Now we have created welcome.js file. Next, within a welcome.js file, let's create a functional component named welcome. So here, look at here the syntax, function. Well, as I mentioned earlier, functional component is nothing but a JavaScript function or ES6 arrow function that returns a JSX. Okay, so here let's create a function and followed by the name welcome. And notice here again, as per the naming convention, the functional component should start with a capital letter, and I have given the capital letter W. Okay, so as this is a function, so here let us have open close braces and open close curly braces. Next, this function returns a JSX code. Well, JSX is nothing but a JavaScript extension that allows us to write a HTML code within a JavaScript code. Well, this is the JavaScript function, right? So within a JavaScript function, we can write the HTML code like this. Let us say we want to print the heading welcome Ramesh. Okay, so this is the JSX code. Well, JSX is nothing but a JavaScript extension that allows us to write HTML code within a JavaScript code. So in next upcoming lectures, we'll understand more about JSX. As of now, just understand JSX is nothing but a JavaScript extension that allows us to write HTML code within a JavaScript code. Okay, perfect. Now we have created simple functional component named welcome component. Next, in order to use this component in other components, we have to export this component. For example, here just type export default and then component name welcome. Well, just remember, in order to use this functional component in other components, we have to export this component first like this. Okay, next let's go to app.js file and let us import this component. So go to app.js, go to app root component, go to div, and here let us remove this h1 element, and here let us use welcome component. So here just type welcome and make sure that this welcome component is imported at the top, and let us close this welcome component over here. Alright, so this is how we use the component inside other component. And notice here the important point, we have exported this welcome component using export keyword, and we have imported this welcome component in an app component using import keyword. Alright, so this is basically ES6 module feature. We can export the component using export keyword, and we can import the component using import keyword. Alright, great. Next, let us save this file and let's go back to browser, and here you can see welcome Ramesh. Alright, so this is how we can create the functional component and we can use in other components. And again, I have mentioned, like, component is a reusable. Reusable means we can use this component as many times as we want. For example, if you go to app component, and here we can reuse this component many times. For example, here let me use one more time and just save this file and go back to browser. You can see welcome Ramesh. Okay, so this is how the component is reusable in a React application. Alright, perfect. Next, let's go to welcome.js file. So, and if you go to presentation, a functional component is basically a JavaScript function or ES6 arrow function. Well, here we have created this functional component using JavaScript function, but we can also create this functional component using ES6 arrow function. So let us go ahead and let us rewrite this functional component using ES6 arrow function. So here, let me copy this and let me paste it over here and let me comment out this. So here, let me show you how we can convert the JavaScript function into arrow function. So in case of arrow function, the function keyword is not required, and in case of arrow function, we should have a variable const welcome and then flat arrow symbol. So this is the arrow function. Okay, next, if the arrow function contains a single statement, then we can remove the open and close curly braces and also the return keyword. For example, let us simplify this. Just remove this open and return keyword and also the close curly braces. Alright, so this is the functional component using arrow function. Alright, next let us save this file and let's go back to browser, and you can see welcome Ramesh. If you refresh, you can see the same output, welcome Ramesh. Alright, so this is how we can use the JavaScript ES6 arrow function to create the functional component. Alright, so functional component is a JavaScript function or ES6 arrow function that returns a JSX. JSX is nothing but a JavaScript extension that allows us to write HTML code within a JavaScript code. Next, in order to use this component, we have to first export it using export keyword. Next, we have to import this component using import keyword, and then we can use in the other components like this. Next, functional component takes props as a parameter if necessary. Well, here we can use props to transfer the data from one component to another component, especially from parent component to child component. For example, here we have app component as a parent component and welcome as a child component. And here, let us say we want to transfer the data from app component to welcome component. Then we can use props. So props stands for properties, and we can pass the properties from parent component to child component. For example, here go to welcome and here just type name and then give name as Ramesh. Okay, next we want to get this Ramesh in a welcome component. So go to welcome component, and in order to get the Ramesh in a welcome component, we have to use props. So here we can pass props as a parameter to this functional component, and next, in order to access these props, we can use open close curly braces. So here just remove this Ramesh and let's say open close curly braces and then type props and then name. Okay, so this is how we can use props to transfer the data from parent component to child component. Next, let's go back to app.js, go to app component. Next, here also let us use the name and let us pass the name. For example, let's say Umesh. Okay, so this is how we can use the props to dynamically pass the data from one component to another component, especially from parent component to child component. Okay, next let us save this file. Let's go back to browser, and here you can see welcome Ramesh, welcome Umesh. So here we are passing the data dynamically to the component. For this first welcome component, we are passing name as a Ramesh. For this second welcome component, we are passing name as a Umesh, and in a welcome component, we are getting that name using props. Okay, so this is all about functional components. In next upcoming lectures, we'll understand more about props, like how we can pass the object or array and how we can get that object and array using props. We'll understand more about props in upcoming lectures. Alright, great. In next lecture, we'll take a look into class components. Alright, great. I will see you in the next lecture.